muchas gracias. Después de esta introducción, yo creo que mi responsabilidad es muy mejor, muy más importante. Voy a me desculpar porque no voy a hablar en español, porque mi español no es tan bueno. Cuando yo hablo español, yo me siento como un chico de 5 años de edad. Entonces, para me sentir un poco más viejo, voy a hablar en inglés. Entonces, peço desculpas por esto. Antes de empezar, gostaria muitíssimo agradecer a Zemos pelo convite. Este é um evento muito importante, fantástico. Eu quisera muitíssimo que todos os eventos que eu participo fueran como Zemos, porque há misto, remix entre conferências, charlas, apresentações, cultura, discussões. E isto eu creio que é muito importante, porque muitas vezes vamos a eventos para discutir novas formas de colaboração, pero os eventos em si são os mais tradicionais possíveis em termos de como são organizados. E Zemos, eu creio que rompe com isto, é muito bueno, é um prazer estar acá. Então, inglês agora. Como é? Eu creio que para português vai ser aún mais difícil para muita gente aqui. Sí, pero uma outra vez. My presentation is going to be divided in 7 parts, and actually I'm going to talk basically about the way I see the present and the threats for education, and the ways I see a little bit of the future. I'm not going to speak that much about the future, but I would like to give you 1 or 2 insights about the ways I see the future of education. So basically, the first thing that I would like to tell you is about the changes that the cultural industry are facing in developing countries, and I'm going to give you a few examples about Brazil about this. So the production of culture and knowledge is transforming very much in the previous years, as you are going to see by these numbers. So basically, if you take the music industry and you see how many physical units of CDs and DVDs are being sold in Brazil in the past years, you will see numbers like this. In 2000, 94 million physical units were being sold. In 2007, only 37 million units of CDs and DVDs were being sold by the major record labels. So if you take a look at one of the largest record labels in Brazil, which is Sony BMG, it's a multinational company, you will notice that per year, Sony BMG is releasing only 13 CDs by Brazilian artists. So basically, if you think that Brazil is a very musical country, and the largest record label is only releasing 13 CDs per year, you might think that something is really going wrong in the country. Where is the Brazilian music now? And I'm going to talk about this a little bit in a second. The same thing goes for the newspapers. So for instance, this is Folha de São Paulo, the largest newspaper in Brazil. And if you take a look at the numbers of the daily circulation of Folha de São Paulo in the past few years, you also see that there has been a decrease. 2005 and 2007, it kept the same, even though the Brazilian economy was going really well. So basically, you would expect an increase, and actually there was a stable situation. And the trend right now is that it keeps falling, so the daily circulation of the newspapers are also falling. In the publishing area, that includes, for instance, educational books, it's very hard to get the numbers. This is an area in which basically it's really, really difficult to know what's going on. So the last research goes up to 2003, and it also demonstrates that there is a trend of decline in terms of sales of physical books. Books actually fluctuate much more than the other industries, but if you look at it from a time perspective, you see also that there is a trend. And the most important information here is that Brazil has 186 million people, but it has only 2,000 and 600 bookstores. So if you can imagine a country the size of Brazil that has a little more than 2,000 bookstores, you will come to the conclusion of the fact that, for instance, the absolute majority of cities in Brazil simply do not have a bookstore. So there are states in Brazil, entire states, that do not have a bookstore. So that's the situation. If you look at the movie industry, it's also very interesting. You know that Hollywood has 85% of the market share of the global market. That means any time in the year, more than 8 movie theaters are going to be displaying or playing Hollywood movies. And these numbers are pretty much the same in Brazil. So basically, every year, there are approximately 300 films being released in the country, and only 50 of these films are actually Brazilian films. All the others are actually Hollywood movies. And basically, if you look at the top box office, the top hits in a regular year in Brazil, you will see something like that. The top 5 films will always be Hollywood films. It's very rare that a Brazilian film get more than 1 million people watching it. The absolutely majority of films in Brazil have less than 100,000 people watching it. So it's a completely difficult system to be sustainable from the economic perspective. And once again, it's important to notice that the entire country has only 2,300 movie theaters. So if you think once again, the absolute majority of the cities in Brazil do not have a movie theater, and even the big cities, only a few neighborhoods like Ipanema, Copacabana in Rio would have movie theaters. All the other neighborhoods will have 0 movie theaters. And the yearly trends for public attendance in movie theaters is also decline. You have a big peak in the 70s. That big peak represents how good cinema was in Brazil in the 70s. And then you have an overall trend of decline with a small recovery in the 90s because of the multiplex phenomenon that actually happened everywhere. But now this recovery is also once again declining again. And the same goes for the revenues obtained by films distributed in Brazil. You have a peak in the 70s, and then once again a trend of decline in this industry. So basically, my point here is that there is a transformation going on. Something is happening in terms of how culture is distributed and financed in the country. And that pretty much goes the same for all the other Latin American countries. They have like their differences, but pretty much in general, the same trends can be found in those as well. So that takes me to the second part of my presentation, in which I would like to call your attention to the fact that collaborative culture not only emerges, but it also gets to developing countries.